Assalamu alaikum, I'm Abdul Hasib, and today what I'm about to share with you is why nations fail. Why are nations divided or labeled as rich and others poor? Divided by wealth and poverty, health and sickness, food and famine? What is it? What is this divide? Is it because of the culture? Is it because of the weather? Is it because of the geography? Or is it that there is ignorance to see what the right policies are? What actually is it? That's the real question. Now, moving forward, I would like to share two terms with you. The first one being extractive institutions. Now, extractive institutions are referred as ones that permit an elite class to rule, to exploit others by extracting wealth from those who are not in the elite. On the contrary, we have the second term, which is inclusive institutions. Now, inclusive institutions revolve around the idea of bestowing equal rights, equal entitlements, equal opportunities, equal voices and accesses to resources and services. It is typically based on the idea of universality, non-discrimination, or a targeted action. Now, for the developed wealthy countries, for the developed wealthy states, what is there? Those revolved around the idea of inclusive institutions, inclusive economic institutions with a basic combination of state and free market in which the state enables the people to invest and innovate by guaranteeing the private property rights or the contract rights at all. Likewise, the state enables investment. It enables growth, economic growth. How? By providing the infrastructure, by providing education. Likewise, the state needs to be controlled by the citizen and not monopolized by a small elite. And the state needs to be maintained. There does not need to be a monopoly of violence. It needs to be maintained. The legitimate matters need to be foreseen. Because the wealthy and developed states are revolving around the idea of inclusive institutions, whether they're political or they're economic. So on the contrary, when we have the inclusive institutions which lie on the idea of growth, of development, there's an opposite. The extractive institutions which extract things away to a site, to one place, to an elite, to a small group of people who only care about themselves. They do not care about the change for the masses. Now, the extractive institutions, whether they're political or economic, they rely on the basic idea of corruption. They rely on the basic idea of dictatorship. They rely on the basic idea of growth. They do generate growth, but it's small term. It's a short-term growth for a small group of people, for small elites. Oh, and what happens in the long term? Disasters, devastated, chaos, poverty, famine, global warming. Everything happens with the elites. So what's important in the extractive institutions, how we see the extractive institutions? Now, the extractive institutions were first established by the colonial powers. And typically, they were born because of an already existing internal extractive institution, which on independence became even more extractive. under the rule of post-colonial rulers. And then what happened? It led to civil wars because the competing factions fought over who had to lead, because everyone wanted to lead. All the small elites wanted to surpass each other. There was no universality, no non-discrimination, no targeted action. There was just selfishness by the post-colonial rulers. So similarly, on the contrary, since these underdeveloped countries have enjoyed the extractive institutions for 3 to 4 centuries, there are developed states, there are developed countries like the United Kingdom, like the United States, who have enjoyed, who have benefited from the inclusive institutions because their ideas, their incentives have gradually become even more and more inclusive through the passing time, giving increased incentives, giving increased economic growth to the entrepreneurs, which resulted in an overall growth for everyone, for the masses, prosperity as one united thing. Right. So, what's crucial for it? The economic growth, the economic successes of these countries, of these states, of a particular group, an economic growth of a single person, even you. It depends on how you set your targets, how you see that, how economy works, how incentives are born. The thing is that you include or you extract. So for a state to be successful, for a state to be guaranteeing prosperity for the masses, the key is institutional inclusiveness. That's the key. And what does such a state provide? Such a state provides us a key degree in infrastructure for increasing economic growth. By what? By promising the private property rights, by enforcing the laws, by providing education, by providing physical infrastructure. The private enterprises, they need these institutions. Education is a very important key. Education is very crucial education for masses, basically, is very crucial in this technological world right here. It's very crucial. Because in this technological world, there is change. And you need to contribute to that change. You need to include to that change. People need to actually have the incentive to study, to go to schools, to go to colleges, to go to universities. They need to extract from there and include in the future. That's why education is so crucial. Now, extractive institutions, they tend to contribute, they tend to work together, but that is just one group, one person, a small elite, and that is disincentive right there. And when we are talking about inclusive institutions, for them to work, there needs to be both. There needs to be a cooperation between the citizens, and similarly, a control over all the legitimate matters, over all the monopolies. That's what runs an inclusive institution. So, seeing the bigger picture here, an extractive political institution breeds an extractive economic institution. And where does that lead to? That leads to failed states. That leads to chaos. So, the simple fact right here is, that in this technological world where we live, there is going to be change. We need to decide that are we going to include there or are we going to extract from it? And since there is going to be change, that means there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. Thus, there may be existing elites that may resist to the changes incoming, because even though if they're beneficial for, or if they're prosperous for the masses in a majority, they may resist it because it's their loss. They are losing there because they enrich all the wealth, they enrich all the resources for themselves. So the simple fact is that you need to contribute to that change. The question is, what are you doing right now? Are you including or are you extracting? Thank you.